Known for its position as the world's second-largest economy in Europe, France has grown in prosperity and has become a regional centre of finance, manufacturing, and highly evaluating industries like tourism, nuclear energy, education, and fashion. It is also home to 31 of the world's biggest 500 companies, and they're all in industries that operate around the globe to bring foreign income back to the country. Despite all these, France has turned out to be the centre of civil riots in the past couple of months. So, what was the economic reason behind these demonstrations? Does it have the potential to kick off another Eurozone crisis? Join us today as we break down the issues regarding the state of France. The protests started in January after France's president, Emmanuel Macron, invoked a special provision to bypass parliament in a bid to push through its controversial pension reform motion. This move was more received by a frosty reception in Parliament, with lawmakers singing the national anthem. The use of Article 49 of the French Constitution allowed the Macron government to avoid a parliamentary vote on the bill, which proposed the raising of the retirement age. This one came after the public sector workers walked off their jobs in droves, culminating in piles of trash building around the French capital. Macron proposed the overhauling of the pension system and wants to raise the legal retirement age by 2 years to 64 and make people work longer before they could have their pensions. Unions were unhappy with the legislation, and millions of workers went on strike since January when the bill was first presented to Parliament. Recent polls clearly showed that nearly 70% of people oppose the reforms, but Macron said changes were needed to protect France's pension system from collapse and to maintain control of government expenditure. He also pledged to boost military spending and wanted to bring the national deficits back to be in line with the European Union's target. The ongoing strikes have effectively ground the French economy to a halt, as a lot of its essential industries, including the ones that don't directly employ the people demonstrating, can't compete without these public functions in place. Today, the average tourist doesn't want to visit Paris because the reports he or she reads talk about violent distractions, and all the attractions that he or she wanted to see are already shut down. The national debt GDP is currently almost approaching 100%, and economies like France will still have a major burden in their economy as interest rates keep on rising. For any economy to function, it needs the factors of production such as capital, land, and labor. It's very possible that in the future developments in automation and artificial intelligence will comprehensively replace the role of people in all parts of the economy, but it's not likely to happen as quickly as most people might be thinking. Robots and AI programs like the recently introduced ChatGPT are just part of what economists call capital. And from our understanding, capital is anything that helps people to produce more stuff. For example, a worker's home will give the worker a place to rest and get ready to produce more stuff. Even the most impressive things that AI can do at the moment are only a small part of everything that needs to be done in a well-functioning economy. And AI might be able to design a house that looks nice, but it still needs humans to do everything else, including double-checking its work. And just hopefully, one day all of these may just happen automatically. But until then, artificial intelligence is just a tool that leverages the work of humans to make more stuff. France has struggled to adopt technical infrastructure into their highly technical industries that have relied more on labor than capital when compared to other economies in the region, particularly Germany. Perhaps you can give Germany a thumbs up for having 100% in this area. Meanwhile, that is a problem that France is struggling with to date. Their population is getting older and spending more time in retirement, putting a greater burden on younger workers. And this happens either directly through taxes that need to be paid by those that are still working to provide public services to those that are too old, or indirectly by unproductive members of society still consuming an economy's resources but providing nothing in return. Therefore, as people continue aging, they will spend a greater portion of their lives being net economic burdens than net economic providers. France has a healthy birth rate of 1.81 children per woman on average, which means it's almost sustaining its population. It also has much lower levels of young immigrants moving into the country to replace people as they get too old to work. Despite the relatively comfortable positions they find themselves in, the French government has taken emergency action to push through retirement reforms that are wildly unpopular with a large part of the French public. Some political commentators have even been suggesting that this could cost the French government re-election, which means that this is not a decision that they would have made lightly. So you might want to ask, why is this so important for France? For starters, controlling the working population is an important issue for all countries, especially advanced economies with low birth rates. It's not even just when people exit the workforce that is becoming a problem. More people keep on entering the workforce later in life because they are spending longer at school and universities before getting their first full-time jobs. Higher education levels normally make workers more productive because their education should allow them to leverage other factors of production to produce more value for a given hour of work. Looking at the macroeconomic level, France has a higher labor force participation rate than even the workaholic in the USA. 73% of French residents between the ages of 15 and 65 usually work where 63% of US residents do. France, despite its reputation for having blazed workers, has one of the highest labor force participation rates of any advanced economy in the world. So if all the macroeconomic metrics are looking so good for France, then why is it the first developed country that is having such visible reactions to issues that other countries have much worse? Well, here we blame the relative strength of their labor force that is letting all of these happen. France has very strong work protection, which they demonstrate so much without losing their jobs. A higher rate of French residents work, but they on average work for fewer hours, because the country has a culture of pushing for work-life balance over the other option of working people as hard as they possibly can maximize economic output. These work protections also extend to long-term benefits, like pensions, which fund the retirement of most French workers. These benefits, together with the flexibility of working in France, explain why such a high percentage of the country actively participates in the labor market, and it also explains why funding pensions is going to be such a problem, and that's because so many people are going to be eligible for them, and they're quite generous compared to most other economies. France's pension system usually falls into three specific categories. One is a non-contributory minimum pension, which is a small amount paid to French residents over the age of 65, who don't have enough assets or income to support themselves. The second pillar is the voluntary private provisions, where people can save their own money in tax-free accounts for retirement. And lastly, the third one is the mandatory pensions provisions, which is the cause of all these riots. Why? It's something that both employers and employees are forced to contribute payroll taxes towards. Therefore, the money from this scheme is usually invested and paid back to workers once they reach retirement age, and it aims to give workers between 70% and 80% of the income they were making during their 25 highest earning working years. Back to the main topic of the problems facing France at the moment. I think there are various things that the government needs to consider. Raising the retirement age is one solution, although that one is quite unpopular. Another option they need to include is to reduce the amount that these pensions pay out, although just like our first point, it is also unpopular. The government could also push more people to utilize voluntary retirement plans, but for a lot of people that are already old, it's too late for them to start now when in their whole life they have been expecting to receive their pensions. Lastly, the government can increase the payroll taxes paid to workers and businesses in the economy so that there is more money going into the system to cover a growing number of people that will be dependent on it as more and more French workers retire. Actually, that is what most organized movements have been asking for. Even though they can put into play the solutions we just talked about, labor force participation in France is very high, and so is unemployment. You see, once people in France get a job, it becomes very hard for them to relinquish it. Why? Because of all the workers' protections. But also on the same, it is very difficult to get a job in France. France has been one country where businesses and organizations are very careful about whom they hire. In most cases, the majority of the French civilians fail to get jobs because, to these businesses and organizations, they appear as unattractive. So what they do in turn is resort to brain drain. If you have watched our video about brain drain, then you can ultimately understand what I mean by mentioning brain drain. Just to give you a summary of it according to this video, most of France's businesses have got into the option of easily hiring someone from another country who doesn't really benefit from the worker protections, but does get hurt by labour market rigidities and higher taxation. As I am talking, France has been in a state of indecisiveness over which solution best fits the interests of all its citizens. Honestly speaking, there is currently no solution that will make everybody happy in that country. What we love about the people of France is that they are very fortunate enough to participate in this debate so openly. Away from that, France's debt burden is also becoming another problem, and historically it's been able to serve as high levels of debt. So what do you think needs to be done to save France from its current state of civil unrest? Please don't forget to share with us your thoughts in the comment section below. This marks the end of our video today. We hope you guys found this video interesting and enjoyable. If so, please don't forget to send us those likes. And also, if you are new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe to it and hit the notification bell to be informed about our newest uploads. Thank you for watching, and let's meet in our next video.